Welcome to the Strategic Project Leader, where we help you leverage strategic project management so you can achieve your goals. Now, here's your host, Fola Alabi.
Good morning and welcome to another fantastic episode on the Strategic Project Leader. It's a wonderful Saturday and I'm super excited to spend my morning with you. Depending on where you're watching me from any part of the world, it could be like just morning for you, nighttime, or maybe just lunchtime as well. I want to say thank you for being here this morning. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about something fantastic. As you know, we always do on the Strategic Project Leader. Always remember, on the show, we bring strategic leadership, we bring project management together to help you become strategic project leaders that accelerate value for organizations as well as create the life you've always craved. I am your host, Fola Alabi. When I come on the show, there's just something inside of me that makes me super excited. But as you can imagine, they say, what can go wrong always goes wrong. And when you're a project manager, when you're a project professional, it's all about trying to adapt, agility, always trying to think about how can you, put things together to make things happen. There's been so much happening behind the scenes, and that's why we're just coming to you at this particular time. But don't hold your breath for too long because I've got two super women who are going to be helping me pull this through. But let me know in the comments quickly where you're joining us from so we can start diving into even questions. And as you know, type your questions in as we're going to have a segment for questions and answers. Okay, let me know. Can you hear me clearly and everything? Is it all great? Today's topic is about expediting execution to accelerate value. Should we go agile or should we go waterfall? I'm going to be bringing up two super women that we're going to be talking about this topic. First off, I want to introduce a trailblazer. Why I talk about this is because when it comes to value, when it comes to project management, it's one that gets her so excited. Jennie has been on the show before, and she's a leader. She's won several awards. She's led transformations. She's a PMO leader. So when we talk about the PMO, we're talking about the governance space that drives strategy for organization, leveraging project management skill set. So Jennie's going to be joining me on stage today, and we're going to be talking about this topic. Can you just please give me a warm welcome as I bring Jennie up front immediately? Jennie, how are you doing this morning?
Hello, good morning, everyone. I am doing fabulous here from South Carolina in the United States.
Fantastic. South Carolina in the house.
Yay.
And before any further ado, exactly, let me know where you're definitely joining us from, and let us be sure that you can hear us clearly. We had a little bit of an issue with the audio before I bring up my next guest. So Jennie, first of all, before we bring our next guest up, a little bit about South Carolina, what you do and stuff, and agility. What brought you into the world of project management?
What brought me to the world of project management? Boy, is that a loaded question. I'll try to keep that brief. I was in my 20s and I was living in Los Angeles, actually. And I had the pleasure of getting a contract role with Toyota Motor Sales because my master's degree is in adult education. And there was a project to where we were rolling out some new education modules for all the Lexus dealerships in the United States. So I was hired because of my background in education. At that point, I had been, a professor teaching computer science, and because that was what my undergrad was in. So pretty strong background for a 20-something-year-old in education. And it wasn't but a few weeks that I was in this role at Toyota. In their project management group, that they put me over a part of their division where I had 24 project managers. I was 20-something years old, and I was a project management leader after a few weeks. So, I mean, it happened, and once I got a taste of that career, game on. So
you couldn't let go.
That company was a Fortune 5 company. So talking about drinking water from the fire hose. I had a good team. I had a good team, and I've loved it ever since then.
Fantastic. You've been right into it. I love that. Just hold that thought for a moment. I want all my guests to know we've already had loads of people join us from Nigeria, from Austin, Texas. We have people from Waterloo, from Newport. We have Victor. He says he can hear us loud and clear. I've got Arizona in the house. Thank you so much all for being here. I've got Chi as well. She loves the topic. We're going to get right in. But before we go right in, I need to bring on stage a very phenomenal leader. Okay, I want to talk about this lady. I remember when we met for the first time, we are just talking about change and project management and the great things she's actually doing. She's another trailblazer. I love the fact that she calls herself a chief impact officer. She's leading the forth when it comes to transformation, leadership, and she has worked for different organizations from Deloitte, to Delta Airlines. Goodness, I need my ticket. I think she needs to give us some travel tickets as well. But the fact is that she holds an MBA, but the piece here is that she's equipping leaders to become tools that can help drive change for organizations. I know she does stuff around certifications as well, that she educates around the future of project management. As I bring us this, can you please join me as I bring up Tamara? Tamara, thanks for being here.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. We've been trying to get this scheduled, and I am so excited on this Saturday morning.
Fantastic. So let us know where you joining us from.
I'm joining from Atlanta, Georgia, in the U.S.
Oh my goodness. Atlanta in the house. So before we get in, let me know when we think about project management, what made you come into this field?
Oh, just like Jenny, it was an accident. I've been in project management for 20 years, and pretty much I got into project management because I was told to. Back then, that's when cell phones were not readily available for everyone, and my aunt told me that I needed to get in technology. And back then, you did what your she wasn't an elder like that, but you did what your family members told you to do. And so that's how I got in technology. I started working for Ericsson, building switches and cell sites. And that's when I fell in love. And I've been in application and infrastructure project management ever since.
I just can't imagine. When you think about project management, you think about transformation you can actually create. And the fact that your journey started because you were told to do it. And I hope you've enjoyed every moment of it. But I want us to get into project management, agility, and all of this piece that comes to play. Tamara, when we talk about project management, the fact is that we are here to deliver value. We are all about creating some form of transformation for our organization. But for me, as a strategic project leader, I just don't want to create value. I want to accelerate that value creation. So today, we want to dive into how can we really accelerate and expedite value for organization. And thinking about it from the start, when you're planning out a project, you want to think about what methodologies you need to adopt, and how do you actually arrive at Waterfall or Agile methodology. How do you get into that as a leader?
Well, that's an interesting question, because that is a question that every organization asks, every program director, C-suite person. But really, you have to get your hands dirty. You have to get your feet wet. So an organization will say, "Oh, I want to go waterfall," but in actuality, when you start meeting with the stakeholders and you find out what the customer and the end user needs, that's when you actually start to say, "You know what? This isn't an agile or a waterfall, but it's actually a hybrid," because you want to get those lessons learned. You want to do those trials. You want to do the pilot. So those characteristics of a little bit of agile, a little bit of waterfall is what you really want to do, because you want to provide quick value for your customer. And that's going to dictate what type of methodology you use.
Awesome. We're going to be doing some role play here. Fantastic. Thanks for muting yourself. Now I know the echo is actually going. Thank you, Louis, for pointing that out. We're just trying to make this just like some makeshift technology shifting product leader stuff we're doing here because of the voice and the echo behind the scenes. So thank you all for bearing with us. The key here is, as project professionals, when you think about delivering value, you think about a project that starts with an idea. We're trying to create something which is going to be an outcome. The way you get there may be by doing a step-by-step approach. Think about a waterfall, right? You create a plan, you got your requirements or whatever it is, and then you go off to you test, you design, you got a stuff, and then you execute and you build, and you create an outcome. Or when we think about agility or an agile type of framework that has to do with Scrum and all the fancy methodologies that come with that, You take an idea, you want to deliver incremental value. And then that's why I want to bring Jenny up. So Jenny, when we think about delivering incremental value, there are times where it's not even possible. You feel that, yes, I know that I want to be more agile as a project manager because things are rapidly changing. But maybe the business is not ready for this. How do you ensure that you can get them up to speed and say, yes, we want to go with this particular method? How do you convince them that that's the right approach?
That's a great question, Fola. Some companies, you talk about, you've heard the words, being agile is a, what's the words that we use? Being agile is a mindset, right? And agile is, I got a little bit different opinion on that. Agile is a tool, right? Being the agility portion is a mindset. And I know I might be splitting hairs on agile because agile is a framework, it's a tool. Waterfall is a framework, it's a tool. And there are different tools in that agile box. But having your organization to have that agility mindset and to think differently about the way they receive value, because that, I think that's, the incremental value. Because with waterfall, now you could do iterative waterfall like we used to do back in the day. And we thought, well, isn't really agile iterative waterfall? For those of us that have done project management for a couple of decades, thank goodness there's hair color. That's just all I'm saying. But I never, isn't agile really iterative waterfall? It's really not, right? Not even close. And to Tamara's point about maybe a hybrid approach where it's agile, maybe we're doing a little bit of waterfall and a little bit of agile. So we'll kind of coin that with agile, right? But training that your stakeholders, your executives, because the executives say, I want the value. Because let's back way up strategically. The goal from X to Y by when. That's what the executives are looking for, right? Oh, you said that this particular product could increase our bottom line by $5 million. That's amazing. But when are they going to get that $5 million? If you're doing, let's just use Scrum for an example, and you're doing minimum viable products along the way and prototypings and MVPs, small releases, that $5 million still may not be able to be realized until much further down the road. So I think that communication with that new agility mindset, right, of, okay, executive so-and-so or stakeholder so-and-so, even though we're using this framework and I know you want this Bugatti vehicle that it's your ultimate goal, your MVP is going to be a tricycle in 2 weeks, right? And so they're like, well, what value is that going to give me? It's not necessarily going to give you value. Could you use it? Yes, you'd have to do some manual effort. You'd have to get on it. You'd have to pedal. It's going to be nowhere near the 5 million that you're looking for. So I think that communication of helping people to understand, because sometimes people say, agile means I'll get things faster. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. In that example about the vehicle, it's still going to take the X amount of time to build the Bugatti. It's just we might start with a tricycle, then we're going to have a four-wheeler, then we might have a dune buggy, right? We're going to have different MVPs, right? Or minimum marketable products, depending on what your shop uses. So I think just really good communication as a leader, as a strategic leader with those stakeholders of, let me help you to realize from a communication standpoint of when you're actually going to get this value.
I think that's definitely, that's a key one. The key here that I want everyone to understand is, as a project professional, we are delivering value. We could have it kind of almost delayed because you are doing a full waterfall approach. And what do I mean by that? As I said before, it's more about you go through real detailed planning at the start. You're going to say, before I start doing anything, we need to do a full detailed plan. We want to walk through every single permutation or options of what's actually possible. You have your work breakdown structure, and you're going to do all of that because that information that you're going to use in the plan is what's going to feed into maybe the costing, the budgets, and all those pieces. There's a lot of detailed planning. It's that sequential approach. And the fact is that a lot of the times, I remember when you have the scope is fixed, the timeline is fixed as well, because you're going to say, based on what we've planned out, we can only deliver the Bugatti that has maybe functionalities where you have a massage chair, whatever that is. But you have to be sure as to what are we delivering from the get-go. And that cannot change. And if that changes, it means we have to go back and revisit the plan, get a change request. I remember sitting on those change management boards where we say, guess what? We have to approve like 5 or 6 changes. But the fact now is, now that we are looking more at an agile approach, now there's a lot of risk management that goes into play, because you're going to say, as Jenny has said, we want to look at the minimum viable product. What can we release to you in the next 2 weeks, in the next 4 weeks, that you can go off and even use and have tangible and say, this is something valuable that we can come back and tweak that. What skills and what tips? I want to bring Tamara up now as we talk about this. So when we get into that decision making to say, yes, I know we're going to have a form of hybrid approach. What steps do you take? What steps do you take, Tamara, to ensure that as we get our stakeholders on the same page, as to now it's going to be this agile approach, what else you bring into play to help you make sure that they're on the same page? Because you know what I mean, it's kind of what they thought they wanted and what they got at the end. You know yeah. So what do you do to ensure that they are all aligned?
So Jenny actually took my answer. When I was listening to her, she was saying everything that I would do, make sure that they understand this is going to start as a tricycle, and then we'll get the minimal viable product. And she really honed in on the communication. The reason why I love Agile, because you're not sending out reports, status reports about, we have the heated seats, the cooled seats, or do you want the massage chair? The stakeholders, the key stakeholders, are actually in the war room with us. BC. When I say BC, that's before COVID, when we were all in the same war room. But now we have these tools where we're working remote, but still the end users, the stakeholders, the customer, they can really not just say, it's not just we're communicating up, we're communicating side to side, up and down. And they're really in those sessions. I'm not going to say meetings, because a meeting, once again, we're giving status. They're really in there actually thinking, I really did want this car to fly and come pick me up, and act as a private jet. However, I realize that is further down the line. This is what my customer XYZ needs now. So it's not just the basic communication. It's really getting in there and have a clear understanding of what our expectations are. So that's the only thing I would add, because Jenny, she hit it right on the nail on the head.
I have the best leaders coming here to talk about this. Thank you, Tamara, for the switch. Communication is vital. Understanding the requirements of what the customer actually wants is critical as well, because you can communicate and say, yes, we're going to be delivering a new IT solution. It's going to give us X amount of functionality. However, when we deliver that minimum viable product, I have seen cases where the customer is like, I know when we're together planning this, I never knew that this was this wasn't what we thought. And then you get the end users coming and say, I thought you actually tested that iteration of it. But how really can we ensure that we are delivering true business value? What are the other things that you have had to do that are extras? Probably things that you probably never find in the textbooks. That helps you ensure that you are carrying the stakeholders along through the process to ensure that value is definitely created at the end of the day. Any tips and tricks?
I like a good old fashioned either a walkthrough or a demo. Those are the best ways where you can really, because like I said, communication, we think about words and spreadsheets and reports. But when you can actually walk through a warehouse, and I had a project once, we were in the warehouse. How are we going to part in and part out? We actually had a cart that was plugged up to the wall, but you have 3 football fields. I want you to visualize 3 football field worth of warehouse, but you have a cart that has a plug that is in the wall. So when you actually do the walkthrough, that is not going to work. However, on paper, it seemed like it was a good idea. But when you actually do the walkthrough and you have the application and the infrastructure, it does not marry or merge well. So when I say get your hands dirty, go to the warehouse, go to the site, do those demos. And sometimes we're afraid to fail. But when you look at every multi-billion-dollar project, what do they have in common? They fail fast. let's fail, let's learn, and let's move on. So that's what I would add.
I love that, but I always love that my own argument is I don't really like the word failure. I
I
love
love
kind of
kind of
using
using.
I know we don't say lessons learned, but we know that's an agile term. But I love a good old lesson learned. So we're gonna be agile and pivot that language, and we're gonna use lesson learned. There you go.
Absolutely. Because there's something about, when I study psychology, you think about the brain and the way things work. Like when you think about pain, you think about failing. It's not a natural feeling where you just say, let me embrace failure, let me embrace pain. The part of your brain that gets triggered is the same part of the brain that gets triggered, like when you go through trauma. So I love like coaching my team and I say, guess what? Let's go through this, let's learn from this because we want to become better. That way, they're like more malleable, like to say, yes, let's do it. Yes, I'm going to bring in my next leader. I want to change gears a little bit. The fact is, it's easy when we talk about the demo, iterative value, communicating it. But there are times where we have to balance meticulous planning with adaptability and speed and agility in the pursuit of value creation. So, my leader, Jenny, how exactly can we really balance meticulous planning? Think about that. Balancing that with speed and agility. How have you been able to balance that?
So I have a saying, and this is going to come across as humorous, but I do say it, and I say it often. So if there's anybody on this podcast today that's worked with me, they're going to be like, "Yep, we've heard Jenny say that many times." Agility does not cure for ADD, right? Attention deficit disorder. So there is a misconception out there that agile means, oh yay, no scope document, no requirements, no big huge documents. And while those words, those artifacts may not exist, the misconception and the myth that there is not a tremendous amount of planning going on in agile is completely wrong, at least in my travels, right? There is, let's use Scrum as an example, because I've done Scaled Agile Framework, Kanban, Scrum. I've done a couple of different frameworks. So we'll just use Scrum as an example, and let's say you are on those 2-week sprints, from a ceremony standpoint. I'm going to go a little bit tactical for a second. From a ceremony standpoint, because we're going back to that roadmap and trying to make sure that we're trying to keep our eyes on the goal. Every 2 weeks when we use our retro, then we go back into our planning. We bring all the right people to the table and we do the planning for the 2 weeks, right? And we do, and I'm like you, Fola, I don't really care for the word fail fast just because of the emotional intelligence. I use in my shop, scrape your knees. It's okay to scrape your knees. We all scrape our knees, but we're on the team together. I'm going to help you up. We're going to put a Band-Aid on it. And I've got some ointment over here. I encourage you to scrape your knees. Because that has a different connotation to it for me and my team. So, but, there is planning. Now, it may not look like in the form of, back in our Waterfall days, a BRD, a business requirements document, or an FSD, a functional specifications document, or whatever other acronym. There may not be those, but there are the epics, there are the stories, there are, the difficulty planning, whether you're using the Fibonacci method or what have you, of how difficult is this to do? Is this going to fit? Or do we need to chunk it up a little bit more? I think the team is truly trying to figure out, with that planning in mind, how can we make this, using their agility, not being agile, using their agility to plan, to adapt, to bring that value. Because, everyone comes to work wanting to bring the value, right? I think people show up to work wanting to be the best and help with the goals. So that's something that I've seen, Fola, in my travels of, and constantly looking at that backlog and those features and marrying those features back up to that goals of that roadmap to where, I think the example we used was the heated seats. Maybe you didn't plan for a heated seat. Like you said, the Waterfall days, oh my gosh, that's a big, huge change control board session. Maybe you got a minimum viable product, and the person that's approving the money, but depending on what you call it in your shop, whether it's executive sponsor, business sponsor, what have you, ultimate product owner, what have you, they sit down in the seat and they're like, I'd like for this to be warm, or I want a cooling feature on it. All right, we'll put that in the backlog. Maybe we can have that in a sprint or two. Right now, of course, you might have to talk about budget, about, well, that's going to cost a little bit more, but do we take another feature or two out to put in the heated seats? Or maybe we just get a little bit more budget. I'm oversimplifying that, of course, for this example, but I think we talk about value often. I think that was your ultimate question, right? We evaluate value often, at least every 2 weeks. And we try to ensure that we're marrying back to that ultimate value for that goal. So I hope those examples helped, Fola, in what I've seen in my travels. Sorry, Fola, we can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Fantastic. Oh, we were able to bring everyone live on stage. Goodness, I've been playing around with it. We have my team right in front of you. Goodness, somehow it worked. Okay. So I love the fact that Jenny has mentioned I just lost my train of thought. My goodness, I'm super excited. We spoke about value, tying it back to the strategic objectives and strategic goals. At the end of the day, I want to find out from Tamara. The organization has their goals though. And we're always trying to make sure that we are delivering value that ties back to them. What exactly are those key performance indicators? What have you seen? What should we be measuring against to be sure that we are definitely doing the things that we should be doing? What are the things that will actually show to the project team that, yes, we're on track to deliver the value that we said we're going to be delivering again? Because at the end of the day, there's no point of doing this projects, right? So what are those KPIs that has definitely worked that you think that we need to be looking out for? And what are the ones that we shouldn't even be bothering about?
That's a great question. That's a great question. The first thing is I communicate, I ask. I know that that's oversimplified, but literally I ask what our KPIs are at the beginning, throughout, every sprint, every release. I'm always checking in to ask because things change, your priorities change, your customer expectations change. And one thing I will add is I always tell the truth. Now, some people try to sugarcoat, we're having delays. They use all these fancy terms. We're going to be severely delayed, and this is XYZ may happen, or we have a huge how can I say product backlog that is going to require a huge impact to our budget. One thing people are so afraid to do in project management is tell the truth. And once you tell the truth to the key stakeholders, they can make an educated decision. So that is one thing. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've been told that's one thing that separates me from other project managers. I tell the truth, and I tell it often and early.
I like
I like
that. I
that.
think the key there is about transparency. So rather than even just trying to be like that superhero, right? The key fundamentals just being transparent. Things will never go according to plan. Life is never perfect. And life will never be. I was telling that even to my 12-year-old. I'm like, how on earth do you think that, things are just going to work and fall into place? It's never going to be perfect. But the difference between you who is prepared for the change is just knowing that when this happens, I'm going to manage my risk. Hopefully you are preparing because you will probably have like a risk register to say that there's a possibility that this may happen. So you will probably be prepared. But things will always change, and just knowing that, because that's going to tie into my next segment when we talk about transparency and talking about building trust. That is one piece that differentiates project managers from strategic project leaders. Because at the end of the day, businesses are out there to make money or deliver some form of value. But with catalysts like PMs who are going to be there to drive this change, it just comes with showing up to say, I'm here to ensure that the team delivers on this actual initiative, but things may not go to plan. And be sure that I am going to be there to tell you exactly how it is. When things are not perfect, you're going to know. But before that happens, I'm going to give you options. And that ties into the next one. See what I mean? So when the stakeholders have options, then they know how to prepare for them. Before we get to the next segment, I want to throw this to Jen. I know we started a little bit late, but now we've talked about your selection, incremental value. We've spoken about communication. We've spoken about the key performance indicators. So now when the rubber hits the road, when your team is a little bit dysfunction, they're like, fine, we're doing all this, they're so stressed, they want us to deliver all of this value. How do you keep your team motivated, Jenny? To stay on course, because in order to accelerate value, at the end of the day, we need good people working with us. How do you keep them motivated?
That's a good question about team motivation. And you've heard about the storming, norming, performing, right? The that kind of thing. And I think also sometimes when you're implementing the tool of Agile, regardless of framework, and that new core team, those 5, 7, 9 people that you're putting together, we have to give them grace to get to that performing team to where they can do their storming and then their norming. And so for example, this velocity that you think this team put together, these are all these rock stars, maybe they've not worked together before, and they should be able to do, this amount of velocity. And I think something gets lost with, they likely are not going to get to that. And I'm making something up because I think it's different per shop, but they may not get to that, to norming to sprint 3, 4, 5. They may not to get to performing till after several months, right? So that backlog that they thought they were going to accomplish might get cut in half, or maybe only 1 or 2 features if they thought, when they thought they were going to get 8 or 9. So we've got to give them room. You hear that term about letting them be a self-managing team. You truly have to give them room to do that, right? And that might look like, some team building activities, or letting them just get in there and hash it out. There's nothing wrong with them, having some good, healthy debate about, well, I would do it this way, or I would do it that way, because they're trying to build that respect and that trust with one another, because that doesn't necessarily come straight out of the gate. But, you see the magic happen when that norming, then that performing happens, to where, now are they going to have problems, because we are in this self-managing team, because in the waterfall world, and even in some of the, what I call the old school culture of, oh, you have to go ask their manager, and their manager has to approve, or, this supervisor has to approve before this actual working resource can do that. If you're putting this core team together, you let them make those decisions. Here's the goals, right? Here's the roadmap. And then, we let them do what they were hired to do. And I find that some organizations struggle with that agility mindset just because they've not seen it before. What do you mean that this person decided to move that feature out? Well, they can work with the product owner, but, your product owner may not be who you report to. And I think some companies have struggles with that. So I give you that as a free tip. That was not part of what you asked. But I do think that setting up those boundaries of, there's not boundaries, maybe boundaries, those expectations about how that team is going to work. So those managers and supervisors understand that, because some of them feel like they might be losing control of their staff. So that can cause stress for the core team. I'm trying to be in here doing my thing, but yet my managers are actually being a blocker. And that can hurt the engagement of the team. So, but again, put in the fun things, put in the water coolers, give them some parameters. And another important thing, help them understand what they're supposed to do when they need help. Where do they escalate to? Which is likely going to be their product owner and or their scrum master, right? The product owner or scrum master, depending on how you're using scrum master and product owner in your shop. But I think those are some things that you can do to help to keep the motivation, the morale, to where they can ultimately get to rockstar performing. Does that help, Fola? You're on mute.
Perfect segue. I heard that for project lifestyle. I love the fact that we're talking about the different levels, thinking about your team, going through norming, performing, and storming. But on this project lifestyle segment today, I sat back to think, when you trying to get through to a methodology. You're trying to make up your mind to how do you approach a particular project? What's the best way to get there? I know that the name of the game for me is about being adaptive. And what came to mind for me was the word sprint. We know that a sprint is like a little segment or division of, you could say, it's like 2 weeks, where you want to break off every iteration of a delivery of an outcome on your project when you're using like an agile or scrum framework. So when I want to use the word sprint, that acronym, to help you become a better communicator. Because what I could string along here is, at the end of the day, we could decide to do waterfall or agile, but if we cannot communicate properly, you cannot build trust. You cannot be transparent. You cannot become the one that really sits there and gets a seat at the table to accelerate value for your organization. So for this segment, I want to think, how can you leverage this beyond even just business? S for me start with your stakeholders. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're trying to build uh, a multi-million dollar pipeline. If you want to renovate your home, you want to build a house, it starts with the people. You need to begin by engaging with who really does matter earlier in the process. What are their needs? What are their expectations? What are their priorities? Effective communication is a skill that cannot be over. God, I can't even talk about it enough, because if you cannot communicate the what, the why, and the when, there really is no point. So start with your stakeholder. That's the S. The P for from the acronym SPRINT is plan for clear communication. People say, I'm going to communicate, but how are you planning for that? Develop a communication plan, even if it's at home. First off, when do you want to send information? How do you want to communicate that? Who are the people that will be receiving the information? How do they want to be communicated to? That's another thing, because you may say, I just want to just share it. I'm going to send slides, or I'm going to just talk to my spouse about this. That's fine. Do they really love being communicated that way? That's a question that you need to think about. Plan for clear communication, because at the end of the day, there really is no point even doing anything if you cannot deliver value. And it takes collaboration, and it takes a team. Communication involves listening and getting feedback, right? So you can deliver the value that they definitely want. Then the R there for me is regular review of progress. It doesn't matter what you think you're creating. If you do not get feedback, I love Tamara talking about failing forward or lessons learned or whatever that is. But it's all about getting feedback. You need to get reviews. Get into a process to understand, how do I review? How do I tell that we're doing exactly what we should be doing? Getting feedback and doing this regularly. And then the I there is about iterating and adapt. Adaptability, gosh, even if you're an accountant, you're a lawyer, you're a CEO, it doesn't matter what it is. Adaptability and being able to deliver value incrementally, those quick wins, it's a must. Embrace that adaptive nature, leveraging communication, really pretty much getting the feedback and saying, what's changed? Do you still need the heated seats, as Jenny gave that example? Or do we need to even scrap even building a car now, and maybe we need to change, do something else because that's what our customers want? At home, you're going to get feedback and say, we wanted to create something new for the kids. Why do we really need that? The world has changed now. We don't probably need to get another um old school computer. We have AI now. AI can do that for us. How are you communicating to ensure that you are iterating and obviously adapting? Oh, the end here is about nurturing open dialogue. You need to nurture open dialogue. And what does that mean? That ties back to your communication plan. How many times have we been in spaces where you just feel that, goodness, I can't even talk here, right? There's no point. My leader is not going to listen, or my spouse is not going to listen, because they just have a block. You need to create an environment, psychological safety. People talk about it a lot. How are you doing that at home? How are you doing that in the office? You encourage your team to express their thoughts and their concerns, and doing that really freely. Because a lot of times we talk about this a lot, but do we really live through it? Do we have a safe space where people say that it doesn't really matter? I know that when I go to Tamara, she's going to listen. Jenny says, Follow, what do you think? These are what we need to create, because at the end of the day, you cannot determine the leader you get, but you can determine who you are as a leader and how you serve. Then the T there is for time box updates. Remember time boxing? But how do you put this in you? You have regular meetings where you say, probably like once a week or once every day, I'm going to give you an orbit in 1 minute. I'm going to share this little insight and say, guess what? We did this. You're going to make your kids excited about that, even at home. Get your stakeholders excited about something. But it's just time box. Make sure it's one that comes up maybe at the stand-up meetings or sprint reviews. You do that. But at the end of the day, the S that stands for that is seek feedback actively. Nothing gets better. Goodness, I just snapped my table without getting feedback. So remember, sprint, S for start with stakeholders, P, plan for clear communication, R for regular review progress, I for iterate and adapt, N for notch open dialogue, T what is what time boxed updates, S is to seek feedback actively. Oh my goodness, that was just a mouthful. My leaders, what do you guys think? How can we leverage this as well in our personal life? How can we create something better? I'm going to do a quick one with Jenny because really for me, it's about creating a transformation for us as strategic project leaders. How can we really be value accelerators beyond just at work, even at home? So over to you, Jenny.
So it's interesting. How can we use this at home? So I'm going to have a little bit of vulnerability here with you guys. So my son, my oldest son, he is 23, and he just wrapped up his master's degree in kinesiology, aka health science, right? And he's like, Mom, I think I want to do what you do. And he just decided this about 6-8 weeks ago. Full, I even reached out to you when this happened, right? I sent you a message and I was like, okay, how do I get this kid involved in project management? He's like, I've watched you my whole life. You love your career. Mine and his personality is both ENFJ, believe it or not, on Myers-Briggs. And I'm like, if you choose that you want to do this career because he's watched me do it, he's watched me live it, he's watched me breathe it, and he decided that that's where he wants to go with his craft. So I, used my network. My network showed up and showed out, and he is going to be working with a Fortune 500 company starting out as a project manager. And they have a healthcare division in this particular company. So I think his master's degree is really going to help with him. But, just knowing that he's watched how I enjoy my career and how I've loved my career, and that he, pivoted his mindset of what he wanted to do. Now, who knows in 2 or 3 years what he might be doing, but this is the track that he's trying to take. And so, again, vulnerable for a moment, but, I think, because it's not about who you are like when we're live and we're on stage here, right? It's about what people that love you the most, what they see. And when I unplug at the end of the day, am I still a really positive, happy person? And I am. And I think he wants to be able to do that, to start his life and his career, and to know that you can actually have a role that you enjoy and have a good work-life balance. So I thought that was the biggest testimony of my journey, that someone that loves me the most wants to do something similar. So that's a vulnerable moment for you, Fola.
Thank you so much, my darling. I know that I witnessed that transition as well, because for me, I believe true success lies in when it transcends beyond just your work. How do you create success overall in the fact that you exude this and your kids can see it and he wants to be part of this as well? I see project management, when leveraged strategically, can transform your world totally. And that's what I'm all about, right? Creating strategic project leaders. Over to you tomorrow. How can we leverage this as well and create something transformational? Because that's when it becomes sustainable. Because when you just go to work and you do it and then you walk away, then what's the point? These are skill set that when I go and I deliver keynotes and I teach him, like, the beauty about this is you're gonna getting two for the price of one. You're gonna leave this and become a better leader at work and a better leader at home. So over to you tomorrow. How can we leverage this as well at home?
Well, if you ask any of my friends, they will tell you I'm always project managing. So they will have to start anything, any trip that we're taking, anything that we're doing, they'll turn to me and say, this is not your project. And so we're project managers 24 hours, but now a lot of them see the value because of the integration of all the knowledge areas. Not to get too technical, but I love risk. And some people are risk averse, but no risk, no reward. And so when we're able to integrate some of those knowledge areas, communication, that Maslow hierarchy of needs. We learned that in undergrad and probably in high school, but that's part of project management. And self-actualization is the highest that we can get, but we know that bottom one. Well, what is the bottom? My brain just blinked. But I can imagine BC, once again, during COVID, we all were at the bottom because we all felt like our basic needs were in jeopardy of not being met. So I would say if you integrate all of the knowledge areas into your everyday project life and understand that it's up, down, it's a roller coaster, but buckle up and have fun, then I would say I'm always project managing. And Jenny, I love the story about your son because, a lot of people, when we started doing project management, it was not a major. Now it's a major. You can get a master's, everybody's project managing. And my niece, she's pre-med chemistry, wanted to be anesthesiologist. And guess what? She was in the class with some people and was like, wait a minute, my aunt does that. And now she wants to do a little bit of medicine, a little bit of project management. So we're an example to so many people, and I love it.
Indeed, project management is transformational. I hope can you hear me? Fantastic. Okay. The fact that I talk about strategic conscious leadership and project management, it's just like a match made in heaven because there we are elevating the discipline. And let's bring this back home. And I want to go into questions and answer quickly because I could almost get whatever. So, brace yourself. Yes, questions and answer time. Now we have a chance to talk about our questions. I'm going to throw the first one to Jenny. Jenny, what has been the most challenging phase that you have had to do with your stakeholders through your career, and how have you overcome it?
So I will give a real one, right? And I'll try to make this brief because I see how much time we have, and I'll make it around Agile. So I will talk about a moment that I scraped my knees, right? Because I think it's vulnerability is important. I was taking a company, I was leading the charge to do a transformation. And not the company that I'm in now, but the previous one. We were doing a full transition from Waterfall to Agile. So, a lot of training throughout the IT department, stakeholders, different departments. But before we got there, it was getting the executive buy-in. And the knee scraping that I did was going into the executive room with using too much jargon, right? Trying to talk about Agile and the agility and talking about frameworks. And so, hindsight, because I've since done it again, and I didn't do that because I think the executives got stuck on the terminology and because it was new to them, and it took the meeting and the conversations in ways that I had not intended for the meeting to go. So much so that I pulled the PowerPoint down, closed the laptop in the middle of the executive meeting, with CEO in route, and said, okay, we're going to change this meeting. And so I shouldn't have started the meeting the way I did. I should have just went in there and just talked about Agile and agility and stopped there and not talked about frameworks at all, and really pivoted more towards the value for them. And smart neighbors speak using their language. Should have never used the word Scrum or Kanban or backlog or MVP, none of that. Not when you're trying to push up in the organization to get them to help to understand. So that's a knee scrape moment that I had. Pulled out my Band-Aids. I learned from it. Next organization did not do that. So Agile transformation, it can be easier, but I just encourage you to do that in your shop if you are in that place of trying to, move to more Agile and get some buy-in. Don't speak the speak, not initially, just because you're trying to speak their speak, not get them to speak yours. So that's an example that I have about some knee scraping.
I love that. And the fact is that when you look at leaders and stage, everyone has got their moments. And I love bringing people who are just so real, right? We talk about our lives, our stories and stuff. There are times where, you're totally down. Just before we came on the show, I was talking about how I had a very interesting, week up until today. But the fact is that we show up that way. But I think the key here is depending on your audience. I love that you mentioned that you need to speak the language of whoever it is you're delivering value to. There's no point, sitting down and telling an executive, guess what? Um, the Kanban board had on the Kanban board, we have like five moving, they're like two blockages right now. And then we have like, listen, they just want to know at the end of the day, how is this going to impact ROI? Okay. What are the risks? So we need to speak the language, especially when we want to accelerate value and to win our stakeholders. At the end of the day, you get the information. You need to take that now to the senior leaders and think what really matters. What are the strategic objectives? Did we want to, win, go get into new markets? And with these issues that we're having, does that mean that's going to impact that? So what's the financial implication? What are the risks? Speak the language beyond a methodology. This is just how you work in the woods, right? In the woods. How, when it comes to value acceleration, it's about value to our senior leaders. So Tamara, I think that ties into the next question. How can we ensure that we can actually speak? I love when I hear people talk about the money talk. What's her name? There's this leader who talks about that. I call that the strategic talk. What really matters? What are those money talk that you position when you're talking to senior leaders? How do you position that to ensure that you're delivering the message that the business wants to hear?
Okay, so I have become an audience member. So ask that question because Jenny's example, I had a flashback when she gave her example. I did the same thing and I had to autocorrect myself. And in actuality, that is an interview question. I've been interviewed from HR and executives on how will you go in an organization that is traditionally waterfall and how will you get them up to speed? Well, I'm not going to get them up to speed. I'm going to sprinkle in, use their language, and get them the end result that they're looking for. I am not going to water hose them to death with, like she said, Kanban board and sprints and all that language. They don't want to hear it. And so ask your question again, because I had a flashback when she was talking and I could see myself in the presentation. I did the same thing. I shut the presentation down and I just started talking like a normal person instead of a PMI, PMP, ACP, all these accolades behind my name. I just shut it down.
It totally ties in. So I think we're still in sync. Can you just Fantastic, Tamara. I think we're still in sync because the question that I asked also tied into what Jenny was saying and what you just gave your piece into. The question really is when it comes to delivering value, at the end of the day, it's not about the scrums or the agile or whatever it is that we say. How can we ensure that we can speak the language of the executives in line with what we're trying to do? So as you said, you come into an organization where it's typically a waterfall, and now you have to get them to begin to accept this whole iterative way of doing things and stuff. What kind of message, how do you package that? Because people are definitely watching, want to know, how do we show up that way? So what do we really talk about? So getting the agile and the PM into the mix, well, you know that it's about business objectives and that kind of thing. So what are the things that you do and how do you get through that?
I just asked them what do they want. So a good example, I was hired into an organization for Fortune 500 company, and once again, BC before COVID, we're on the elevator, and he is an extreme introvert, one of the executives, and I'm a chatty catty. I had nothing to talk to this man about, but I had to use this opportunity, and I briefly asked him. I said, "Well, I'm new to the organ." I didn't say I was new to the organization. Just started talking, and I said, "What PM is on one of your projects that is just a stellar PM? You love everything about them, what they report and how they do XYZ." And he turned around and looked at me and was like, wow, nobody has ever asked me that question. And the reason I wanted to know is I wanted to know what is already working. I did not want to reinvent the wheel. I wanted to start from, not to say a framework, try not to use the jargon, but just what is working and then add to that. And he identified a dashboard that one of the PM program managers was giving him, and it was color coordinated. Of course, you got your green, yellow, and red. You don't want to ever we're never going to get to red, green and amberish. And so he was just like, You know what he did? He was like, oh my God, Timber, this is amazing. I'm going to have all the other project managers that report to me stop doing what they're doing, all these hodgepodge, reporting mechanisms, and do the same exact report. And more specifically, he wanted this report. He said if you had to upload it, pull it up, or open up an attachment, it is too big. He wanted to see, you can't see my phone, but a snapshot, a dashboard that he can see reading it on his phone on his way to a meeting. So to answer your question, give the people what they want. Like Burger King, they can have it their way, but make sure that you meet their objectives, and once again, sprinkle in agile. Do not use the terminology, just give the people what they want and what they need.
I think that's like the pretty much a good summary for today. We need to give the business what they definitely need. And what I say is you start with what they want and then get them to what they need. And so I always talk about this going to be an article I'm going to be releasing soon. Just a sneak bit. Pick when people come in to say, what exactly is your role? They say, I'm a project manager. No, you're not a project manager. You are a key business driver. It's about the outcome. What's the transformation you're creating? With the way you show up, you're giving the business what they need. And what do they need? They need their strategy executed. So you become a strategy driver. You are the one that helps drive the strategic outcomes for the organization. That's probably like a light bulb moment. We're going to say, oh, I never realized that. Yeah, because when strategy get designed, we take that and we make sure that it becomes something tangible. And then people are going to start saying, I never realized that. I was that of a big deal. I'm like, yes, as a project professional, you are a big deal. I cannot believe, we 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 cannot.
I think you're stuck in a loop, Fola, somehow.
Okay, we need to end the show. Can you hear me though? Can you hear me? Okay. I want to say thank you, Tamara and Jenny, for being here. But first of all, let's look the audience though. How can people find you? I want you to end with this. How can people find you? What's the last key nugget, word of wisdom you want to leave with the audience today? We're going to start with Jenny.
So how you can find me, please connect to me on LinkedIn. I'm not a consultant. I'm a practitioner. So I'm out here slaying dragons, in the PM world, leading a project management office like a number of you are. So please connect to me on LinkedIn. I've got several other speaking engagements that are coming up here in the fall, and would love to hear your feedback. And that's what I have for you. And my last piece of advice, about Waterfall and Agile that I leave you with is, as you heard from my knee scraping, it's not about the tool. It's not about the framework. It's not about the methodology. It's really about how can you get the value. And I know you hear that a lot, but I mean, it's really, really true, at least in my travels. So thank you, Fola and Tamara, for allowing me to be on here with you today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much. And Tamara, just the same way. How can people find you? And what's your last golden nugget for the audience today?
I can be reached the same way on LinkedIn. I love for people to follow me on LinkedIn, and that way we can get to know each other. You can see my style. The nugget that I want to leave you with is, like Nike said, just do it. Just start and just do project management, a little waterfall, agile, and a hybrid. But just get your hands dirty and just like Nike said, just do it.
Just like Nike said, just do it. But I want to add a little bit to that. As you're doing it, please deliver what the business definitely needs. It's not about you. It's not about your title. It's not about anything. Be a better communicator. Show up. Think about the sprint. Think about that acronym, right? How are you going to put it all together? Deliver value. Go back and get feedback. Because at the end of the day, like you might think that you have it all figured out, but there's always better and greater power in multiplicity. Think about it. Tamara shared a bit. We had Jenny, you had me. There is a power in collaboration. There's a power in coming together and working as a team. We create something bigger and better. As I say, Jeff Bezos says he wants to create a ding in the universe, but I believe with strategic project leaders together, we can create a positive dent in the universe together. I want to thank Chi, Tanya. I want to thank the names. It actually goes on. I just went on my phone. Some of the texts were not coming through the StreamYard. I don't know what's going on. We had Taya, we had Gerard, we had people from the UAE, we had Texas in the house, Jessica, we had Somali, we had Hazar, we had people from Waterloo, we had Doris, we had Lewis. I want to say thank you to everyone who we could actually respond to. We had so many questions that we promise we're going to go into the chat and respond to and give you answers to your questions as well. We've got six sensational people who definitely want to be there and support you through your journey. But above all, I always make it clear that you are your life's project manager. And to make your life's project count for anything, it takes work, it takes execution. Take action today and let me know what's the one thing you're going to be doing differently. You spent an hour with us today. That's one PDU. But beyond that PDU is what transformation are you going to be creating? What are you going to be doing differently? Are you going to be, communicating differently? Are you going to be planning differently? Are you going to start thinking about, as Tamara said, ask your stake, book a meeting and say, what exactly works great here? Take that feedback and create something bigger and better. You guys are the ones that we do this for, and we want to be sure that we are creating value and showing up to do this consistently. So we want some feedback as well. Thank you so, so much for being here, Tamara. We made it. Thank you so much, Jenny. I know it was all put together. And with all the technical glitches, somehow it worked. You can find us and find out more on strategicprojectleader.com, or if you want to learn more about me, you go to folaalavi.com, where I share insights about my teachings, my keynotes, and more that we could all do and learn together. Thank you so much for being here. But remember, same time next week, we're going to be here delivering value to you, helping you accelerate value for your organization, and above all, helping you create the life you truly crave. Have yourself a wonderful weekend. Bye bye.